She came to her own luxury resort disguised as a weary traveler, only to be humiliated by a rude receptionist. Little did they know, she was the CEO. What happened next shook the entire hotel to its core. Watch the full story to see how one bold decision changed everything. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more captivating stories. The secret behind the disguise. It was a scorching late afternoon in Las Vegas. The city was alive with neon lights flickering against the fading sunset, and the sidewalks bustled with tourists, gamblers, and dreamers chasing fortunes. A worn-out taxi screeched to a stop in front of the opulent Levit Resort, one of the most prestigious hotels on the Strip. Out stepped a woman, unassuming and weary-looking, dressed in faded jeans with frayed edges and a washed-out t-shirt. Her baseball cap covered most of her face. But even then, nobody would have suspected that she was Karoline Leavitt, the CEO and owner of the entire resort chain. Karoline wasn't here for pleasure or business meetings. She wasn't here to bask in the glamour or rub elbows with the elite. This time, she was on a secret mission. For months, she had been receiving unsettling reports from her management team about declining customer service, rude staff, and growing complaints from longtime patrons. The Levit Resort had always been synonymous with luxury and excellence, but something was deeply wrong, and she needed to see it with her own eyes. Instead of arriving in a private limo with an entourage, she chose the old taxi and the disguise to blend in. She knew that if she showed up in her usual designer suits and signature confidence, everyone would be on their best behavior, faking perfection, but that wasn't what she needed. She wanted the raw, unfiltered truth. Karoline adjusted the strap of her beaten-up duffel bag and walked toward the grand entrance. The sheer elegance of the lobby hit her like a wave. Crystal chandeliers gleamed overhead, marble floors glistened like polished mirrors, and golden accents adorned every corner. Guests dressed to impress lounged in velvet armchairs, sipping cocktails and chatting with hushed excitement. As Karoline approached the front desk, she spotted a group of receptionists huddled together behind the counter, giggling and chatting, completely oblivious to the guests forming a disorganized line. At the center of the group was Emily, a strikingly pretty but arrogantly confident young woman, seemingly more interested in her phone than her job. Taking a deep breath, Karoline approached the desk and cleared her throat politely. Emily didn't bother to look up. Instead, she rolled her eyes and continued texting. Karoline waited a moment longer before speaking. "Excuse me, I'd like to check in," she said softly. Emily gave her a fleeting glance, her eyes scanning Karoline's appearance with disdain. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" she scoffed. "This hotel's a bit upscale for someone like you." Karoline bit back her anger and kept her tone calm. "I have a reservation," she replied, refusing to break eye contact. With an exaggerated sigh, Emily tapped on the keyboard without much effort, her expression laced with annoyance. After a few seconds, she tossed a key card onto the counter without a single word of guidance. "Room 307, she mumbled. "Take the elevator yourself." Karoline picked up the key card, her face composed despite the indignation bubbling within her. Without saying another word, she headed toward the elevators. She could feel the stares from the other guests and even the barely concealed snickers from behind the desk. But Karoline wasn't just disappointed. She was furious. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she couldn't help but think about how many guests had been treated this way without her knowing. The core values she had worked so hard to instill had been disregarded, trampled on by arrogance and entitlement. She leaned against the elevator wall, gathering her thoughts. This wasn't just a personal offense. It was an attack on everything she had built. Reaching her room, she dropped her bag on the bed and took a moment to breathe. She knew she had to confront this head-on, but rushing wouldn't get her anywhere. She needed to gather evidence, talk to more staff and guests, and see how deep this problem really went. After a quick change of clothes, she left her room to observe the hotel from the shadows, noting every detail, every interaction, and every sign of negligence. As the night unfolded, Karoline witnessed more troubling incidents. Bartenders ignoring patrons, housekeeping staff chatting in hallways while neglecting their duties, and concierge brushing off simple guest inquiries with dismissive remarks. It was worse than she thought, and her anger boiled under the surface. She couldn't let this go unchallenged. Not only had her staff lost sight of their purpose, but they had also stained the reputation of Levit Resort. She needed to make a statement, something that would shake the entire staff out of their complacency. Her mind raced as she formulated a plan, one that would expose the truth in a way they'd never forget. The upcoming gala was the perfect opportunity. Everyone would be there. Staff, management, VIP guests, even the media. It would be the ideal stage to unveil the reality of what was happening. Karoline didn't want to just make a point. She wanted to transform the entire culture of the hotel. With her plans solidifying in her mind, she made one final call to her trusted assistant, instructing them to prepare everything for the gala without revealing her identity. As she hung up the phone, Karoline looked out over the dazzling Las Vegas skyline and promised herself that she would not rest until her empire was restored to its former glory. The revelation in the storm. The night of the grand gala had arrived. Levit Resort was transformed into a dazzling spectacle, with crystal chandeliers sparkling like 1,000 diamonds, velvet drapes cascading elegantly, and tables adorned with exotic flowers and golden table settings. VIP guests in lavish evening gowns and sharp tuxedos mingled, sipping champagne as soft jazz filled the air. This was the annual charity gala, a signature event of the resort, and no expense had been spared. Backstage, the staff hustled to ensure perfection, oblivious to the brewing storm. Karoline, now dressed in an elegant navy blue evening gown with her hair swept up, blended seamlessly among the elite. Her presence went unnoticed, just as she planned. Her heart thudded steadily as she scanned the room, her eyes locking briefly on Emily, who was working the bar, confidently flirting with a wealthy guest and barely paying attention to her duties. Karoline moved to the side of the stage, giving a subtle nod to the event coordinator, who promptly took to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the coordinator's voice echoed through the hall, "please welcome the visionary behind this magnificent resort, the CEO and owner, Karoline Leavitt." The room fell silent, and heads turned toward the stage with curious anticipation. Emily froze in place, the color draining from her face as Karoline strode confidently onto the stage, her presence commanding every gaze. Karoline took a deep breath and gripped the microphone, her voice strong and clear. "Good evening, everyone," she began. "Thank you for being here tonight. As you all know, the Levit Resort has always stood for luxury, comfort, and most importantly, respect. It's more than just a building, it's an experience, a promise of excellence." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, but Karoline's face remained stern. "However," she continued, her tone hardening, "recently I've become aware of something troubling. A loss of that core value, a loss of respect, from the very people who are meant to uphold it." Gasps whispered through the audience, and the staff exchanged uneasy glances. Emily was visibly trembling, trying to hide behind the bar. Karoline didn't falter. "Tonight I came here not as a CEO, but as a guest," she revealed. "I arrived without my entourage, without my title, and what I found was a disgrace, disrespectful service, arrogant attitudes, an utter disregard for the standards that built this place." She paused to let her words sink in, her gaze piercing through the crowd. "One person in particular," she said pointedly, "treated me with contempt, judged me based on appearance, and failed to embody the spirit of hospitality. Emily." All eyes turned to the bar, where Emily looked as if she might collapse. Her hands trembled, her face pale. Karoline remained unyielding. "Emily, your behavior earlier today was unacceptable. I came as a weary traveler, and you humiliated me. You have shown a complete lack of respect to the very guests you are employed to serve. Therefore, I have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." A stunned silence settled over the room. Emily stammered, trying to speak, but no words came out. Security approached discreetly, guiding her out of the room. Karoline took a moment to gather herself before addressing the audience once more. "But tonight is not just about one person's mistake," she declared. "It's about the culture that allowed such behavior to flourish. Starting now, I am initiating a complete transformation of Levit Resort's values and practices. Every single staff member will undergo comprehensive training in respect, empathy, and professionalism. If you cannot meet these standards, you are free to leave. Her gaze softened as she spoke more earnestly. Levit Resort was built on the foundation of excellence and human dignity. We will reclaim that foundation. We will restore our legacy, and I will lead this transformation personally. A wave of cautious applause broke out, building in strength as the guests and some staff members began to nod in approval. Karoline stepped back from the microphone, her eyes glistening with determination. The message was clear. Change was not just necessary, it was inevitable. As the music resumed and the tension gradually lifted, Karoline walked off stage with her head held high, determined to follow through on her promise. The gala continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. No longer just a night of celebration, but a call to action. Karoline knew she had just ignited a firestorm, but she was prepared to weather it. She had made her stand, and now the real battle to reclaim the heart and soul of Levit Resort had just begun. The climax, unleashing the storm. The fallout from the gala was immediate and brutal. By the next morning, social media was ablaze with clips of Karoline's speech. Some praised her bold leadership and commitment to change, while others called her ruthless and heartless for firing Emily on the spot. Hashtags like #Levitt Scandal and #CEO Drama trended online, and news outlets picked up the story, spinning it into a sensational scandal. Karoline sat at her desk, staring at her phone as it buzzed nonstop with calls from board members, media requests, and messages from loyal staff showing support. But not everyone was on her side. Anonymous employees leaked internal memos, accusing Karoline of creating a toxic, fear-driven workplace. Former staff members came forward, claiming she had been an unreachable, distant leader, blaming her for the resort's decline. In the midst of the chaos, a group of disgruntled employees, led by some of the oldest staff members, staged a protest outside the resort, chanting slogans demanding Karoline's resignation. Some employees refused to attend training sessions, considering them a punishment rather than an opportunity to grow. The media eagerly covered the protests, painting Karoline as a tyrant who lost touch with her people. Board members, fearing the negative impact on the brand, called an emergency meeting and confronted Karoline. Some demanded that she issue a public apology and reinstate Emily to mitigate the backlash. Others argued that her leadership had become a liability. Karoline, visibly exhausted but unwavering, defended her actions. "I built this empire from the ground up," she said firmly, her gaze piercing through the tense room. "I will not allow arrogance and disrespect to taint its foundation. If we start bending our principles because it's easier or more convenient, we'll lose what made us great in the first place." Her words didn't win everyone over. A few board members threatened to resign if she didn't comply, while others remained supportive yet cautious. Realizing that she needed to take control of the narrative, Karoline decided to hold a press conference. The next day, standing behind a podium with cameras flashing and journalists jostling for position, Karoline took a deep breath and addressed the controversy. "I understand the outrage. I understand the confusion," she began, "but I will not apologize for demanding respect and accountability. This resort is more than just luxury. It's a commitment to excellence. I recognize that some of my decisions have been harsh, and for that, I take responsibility. I should have communicated better. I should have been more visible. But make no mistake, my intentions remain the same. This place will not compromise on dignity and integrity." Her honesty struck a chord with some, but fueled resentment in others. As the press conference continued, one journalist asked, "Do you regret firing Emily publicly? Wasn't that an overreaction?" Karoline took a moment to consider before answering. The manner of Emily's dismissal was not meant to be an example of humiliation, but a statement of accountability. "I regret that it came across as harsh. I believe in giving people second chances, but in that moment, I needed to send a message. We are correcting our training methods to ensure that no one feels targeted or victimized." Back at the resort, morale remained fragile. The staff was divided. Some admired Karoline's decisiveness, while others whispered in corridors about her cold-heartedness. Karoline knew that to truly restore unity, she needed to lead from the ground up. In the following days, she began personally visiting different departments, sitting down with teams and openly discussing their concerns. She listened more than she spoke, allowing employees to air grievances and share their struggles. To rebuild trust, she made herself present and accessible, showing that her passion for the resort wasn't just about authority, but about community. Slowly, stories of her dedication and hands-on involvement began circulating among staff and guests. Employees who once felt disconnected found themselves rethinking their perceptions. A sense of cautious optimism started to take root, but the damage was far from fully repaired. One evening, as Karoline was reviewing reports in her office, she received a visitor, one of the senior housekeepers, Martha, who had been with the resort since its opening. "Ma'am," Martha said hesitantly, "I was angry at first, thought you were too harsh, but seeing you here, listening to everyone, it's changed my mind. I just wanted to let you know that I believe in your vision. We'll get through this." Karoline smiled, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you, Martha. That means more than you know." As Martha left, Karoline looked out over the glittering cityscape, knowing that the journey was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, more resistance to overcome. But in that small moment, she felt a glimmer of hope. The storm hadn't passed, but at least now, she wasn't facing it alone. Resolution in a new dawn weeks turned into months, and the dust finally began to settle. Karoline's hands-on leadership approach gradually won over the staff. She didn't just implement changes, she participated in them. From sweeping the lobby floors alongside housekeeping to helping bartenders serve guests during busy nights, Karoline made it clear that no role was beneath her. Employees saw her commitment firsthand, and the whispers of discontent faded as admiration took root. One morning, as Karoline was checking the guest feedback reports in her office, Sarah, the director of operations, walked in with a bright smile on her face. "You'll want to see this," Sarah said, handing over a printed report. Karoline scanned it, her heart racing as she read the numbers. Guest satisfaction ratings had skyrocketed, and social media sentiment had flipped from criticism to praise. Customers were sharing their positive experiences online, praising not just the luxury, but the personalized, warm service they received. The words revival and transformation appeared frequently in online reviews, and even the media was now covering the comeback story of Levit Resort. "Can you believe it?" Sarah beamed. "We did it." Karoline set the report down and gave Sarah a grateful smile. "No," she replied humbly, "we did it." As a team, the turning point came when several former employees, who had once been part of the protest, requested to return to work. They expressed regret for not understanding the vision Karoline had aimed for and wanted to be part of the new culture. After carefully reviewing each case, Karoline agreed to reinstate some, provided they went through the new training process. During one of the staff meetings, Karoline addressed everyone openly. "I know we face challenges, and I know I haven't always communicated in the best way, but I've learned just as much as you have. This place isn't just about me. It's about all of us. Thank you for staying, for fighting to make this better. You've proven that together, we can rebuild something incredible." Applause erupted, and for the first time in months, the atmosphere felt hopeful and invigorating. As Levit Resort returned to its former glory, and even surpassed it, Karoline began planning the next chapter. She set up a mentorship program within the hotel, where experienced staff could help train newcomers in both technical skills and the core values of respect and integrity. The program wasn't just about service standards, but building a sense of community and pride. Soon after, a travel magazine named Levit Resort the best luxury comeback of the year, and Karoline was invited to speak at a hospitality conference. During her speech, she shared not just the challenges of leadership, but the lessons learned from her own mistakes. "Leadership isn't about being perfect," Karoline told the audience. "It's about being willing to admit your faults, listening to others, and working together to make things right. True success comes not from being in control, but from being in touch with the people who make your vision possible." As the applause echoed through the conference hall, Karoline knew that her journey was far from over. She still had much to learn and more to give, but one thing was certain. She had regained not just her company, but the trust of the people who mattered most. That evening, back at the resort, Karoline sat on the terrace overlooking the bustling strip, the lights of Las Vegas glowing brilliantly. A sense of peace washed over her. The storm had passed, and in its place a new dawn had risen, full of promise and pride. And as Karoline sipped her coffee, she couldn't help but smile. The fight had been worth it. not just to save a business, but to reclaim a dream and a legacy that would stand the test of time.